So anyway, when we see orbs, we are seeing the elemental orbs. The little guys are those guys. When we're seeing the big ones, we are seeing, just like when we go into orb ourselves, we are seeing people in orbs. They are orb people. They are persons that are alive from someplace else. And they will, they can come for either good purposes or not good purposes. So don't just because you have orbs, don't immediately trust them. Run your crystal river or whatever, and then see if they still come back. Right. Anyway, next one, please. This is just reminding us of the Shona fields. When we talk about the embedded Cathara grids that we had, and we've talked about this a long time ago, the Shona fields, which are shaped like what are called buckyballs, which are Buckminster fullerenes, right? Yeah, and it's like the carbon, what is it, carbon 60, C60? Yeah, like the C60, what, atoms are shaped like that or something? Yeah. So it goes with the C60 atom shape. They're actually using this structure to harness and mess with DNA and to capture things inside this configuration when they're doing like genetics and stuff now. I've been reading little bits of it in science magazines for nanotechnology, yeah, and those kind of things. That's right. Yeah. So the mess in our body systems that are caused by the messes in our field, that are caused by the messes in the planetary grids, are actually create these layers that some of them are in the body, some of them are around the body, but they are literally elemental harnesses. And look at that. They're shaped like pentagrams, too. They're little pentagrams all put together. And they would have the pentagram flows instead of the pentagonal flows.
So I would like to connect this information with current events that you may or may not be aware of. There has been a lot of chatter recently about drones and what are the drones and where are they coming from. And also there have been sightings of orbs zooming around in the atmosphere at 40,000 feet doing very aeronautically impossible maneuvers. So I wanted to share this information with you about what an orb can be. It can be an interdimensional travel vehicle, and I know this seems like it's science fiction and it's super high woo-woo, but actually it's not. So I want to share a personal experience that I had when I was, just sort of beginning to ask questions about my own energy field and how it intersected science and spirituality. And I did have occasion to, more than once, to do what is called bilocate, which means to take my awareness that's in my body, focus it slightly differently for a short period of time, and interact with a completely different environment while my body was tucked away safe and sound in my living space. This is something that other people who have spiritual gifts and who are sometimes known as adepts can do. In my instance, it was the first time, not out of my body, on an out-of-body journey, but it was the first time that I was specifically located in a space where there had been a car accident. And in my apartment, I felt a little bit drowsy, and I kind of just thought, well, I'll lay down. And as no sooner had my head hit the pillow, then my focused consciousness was projected to the scene of an accident. Now, it was a very small scene, and I was stationed at one of the cars that had been in the accident, and there was a woman and her two children were in the back seat, and they were dazed, but they were not seriously injured. And my job was to stay with the woman and speak to her and tell her that help was on the way and that she was fine and her children were fine, and I was going to stay there with her until help arrived. Now, she sort of was kind of trying to understand what was happening, so she didn't respond right away verbally, and so I had a second to look over to the other car. It was literally a head-on crash. The other car had been plowed into another big object. I think it was a tree, and the driver was no longer alive, and there was someone attending that person in that car, but I knew intuitively that the driver was dead and that that was not my assignment and that I should stay where I was. So I did stay for not very long enough to be able to say to the woman, someone is about to arrive, you're going to be fine. And then I literally moved out of that location And today, I'm sure that if anybody had been recording that, they might have seen an orb. And that would have been me, because I wasn't in a car, I wasn't in a plane, I wasn't on a bicycle, I wasn't on a motorcycle, but I was definitely there. Now, for those of you who are thinking this was a flight of fancy, I will share with you that this happened on a weekend. On Monday, my apartment neighbor upstairs, Bill, I heard him coming up the stairs, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and so I opened my door and said, "Hey, Bill, how you doing? Where you been?" And he said, "Oh, I was visiting upstate New York." And all of a sudden, I flashed on the environment in which I had been standing in while I was out of body. And I had been looking at it, trying to figure out where I might be, because it was a really very narrow lens. 2 cars, a small scene, not even the roadway very much, and then some trees. But I recognized the trees as being, sort of the kind of trees that we have here in the Northeast. And he said, "Oh, I was in upstate New York." I said, "Oh, Bill, your sister and your nieces were in a car accident." And he looked at me, and he's just eyes wide open and his jaw dropped. He said, "How could you possibly know that? That is where I was, and that is what happened." And I said, "I know, Bill, because I was there." And I was aware at that time that they were minor injuries at best. Is that how things turned out? And he said, "Yes, it is." That was validation for me and a puzzle for Bill to work out in his own time, space, and lifetime. But I wanted to share that because when we see orbs, and I have actually a photograph of me, and I have me surrounded by violet blue orbs that crowded around me after I finished teaching a workshop. And this was an image that I was able to capture on my cell phone at that particular time. It was one of the first workshops on energy and energy healing that I taught here in my hometown of Philadelphia. And it was a retreat weekend, and people came from lots of different locales to attend that training. This is just to assure you that this way of being and operating with your consciousness is possible, and that there are many who are able to do this. I'm one of many, but it's helpful for people to have the information and then the validation so they know that these are not pipe dreams, that these are actual events that take place, and these are skill sets that one can develop. Okay, so I'm going to tack this on to this video about orbs and interdimensional travel. And again, it's me, Anais Salas, and I'm introducing you to what I can validate that I have learned about Keylontic science that came 10 years after I had already had many of the experiences that are described in Keylontic science. This is how spirit works, because it wants you to know that you're living in truth. You really have to live through the experience, and then the dots will connect all around you.